So very briefly, I got all this stuff on the slide, but why would you listen to me? And I just want to tell you, I'm just a guy probably like you. I'm a little older, but a few years ago, I just got really tired of interviewing. I got really tired of working 70 hours a week and not being appreciated. Okay. So if you can relate to those things, then you're probably in the right place. Because all this other stuff, this works. But I will tell you that the other reason is I've made this work. I have a fractional business that pays my bills, allows me to work on lottery ticket uh, deals, Scott. Like my life is 15 hours of client work and another 40 hours because I'm a workaholic on lottery ticket stuff and doing stuff like this that I love, talking about fractional and growing Freeway to fractional, which we will also talk about a little later. Okay. So that's me. And then we can't cover, I mean, some of you came here to learn about fractional. Well, we're not going to be able to cover that all in one meeting. And really the purpose of this meeting is just to talk about what fractional is, what and how it works here and why it's taken off for fractional CFOs here in the US, and then have a conversation about 4 or 5 points based on some research I did about contrasting the US versus Latin America. I could be totally wrong, okay? I mean, you guys that have experience, you goes, well, that's bad research. Well, I'm open to that, right? Just let me know. But I think it'll be really valuable to have this conversation about can and does fractional have an opportunity to grow in Latin America? And of course, I'm pro that, so I think it works everywhere, but it may not. I don't know. We'll discover that together. So we're going to talk about what fractional is. We're going to talk about why it took off briefly in the US. And then the majority of our time is we're going to just discuss the applicability, easy for me to say, applicability of fractional in Latin America. Okay. So hopefully that's good. I'm not going to teach you how to sell fractional tonight. I'm not going to teach, I mean, we've got meetings for that, right? And I'll talk about those later. I can't tell you how to set up your fractional business in this meeting. So if you came for that, stay tuned. There's other opportunities, but for tonight, this is trying to put some boundaries around the conversation. Okay. And everybody okay? Thumbs up. Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay. So first, what is fractional? And there's so much confusion about what fractional is, right? But it's really it's right here. Selling a fraction of your time to multiple companies, right? So there's companies out there that can't afford a $250,000, $300,000 a year person, but they certainly can afford a day a month or a day a week for you at $7,000 or $8,000 a day, or a month. I'm sorry. Watch my decimal points. I mean, I'll take it, but yeah, $78,000 a month in the United States is not unusual now for a day, a week. Okay, it stops. So basically, it's not. And then how does this balance against consulting? Okay, and I had a friend who got, rest his soul, passed away and explained this to me several years ago. The difference between what a consultant does and what I love and what I like about fractional, and I like to use the term fractional leadership, is a consultant discovers the problem. He sits in the conference room, finishes the problem, and goes away. Right. And I make that, I like the your hand in a bucket of water discussion when it comes to a consultant, right? It works. They fixed it, but when he pulls his hand out of the water, there's no difference. And about 90% of consultants don't really help you fix your systems, your people, and your processes, right? To be better. And you can't do that in a short-term relationship. So A fractional leader is someone that comes in, and I'm not saying consulting is bad, and I'll come back to that, but a fractional becomes a long-term member of the management team. Okay. So think about that. Does a CFO come in and run the books? Does a CFO come in and balance the checkbook? Does, no, you're strategic and you're identifying issues and you're part of the management group. And you need to and these companies can't afford that full-time CFO. So you're coming in as that leadership, you're filling that gap in their team. So anybody have any questions about what that means? Does that make any sense?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. And yeah, thumbs up work for me, but I want to make sure we're communicating, because you put a nickel in me and, I'll be down the road and we'll be done with this presentation in 5 minutes and it's not really communicating, right? So here's the thing that I find people, I'll make 2 points. One, you probably have to do a little consulting to build that relationship. Okay. So you come in, we teach good, better, and best. A good project gets us in the door. For me, I do business evaluations and valuations, right? By the time I'm done doing that, I get paid to do that. It's not free consulting. And I'm not the cheapest guy in the world that does that anymore. Okay. But I'm in the door. I learn a lot about their business. I find some low-hanging fruit. Better is I help them solve the next problem. I might not even do it. It could be an insurance issue. It could be a contracts issue. But I come in, I bring friends in, which, by the way, I get a percentage for bringing them in. So that's another whole message, training. But I bring in friends, if it's not for legal or insurance. So those aren't really good examples, but for HR and stuff like that. So anyway, legal rules. But I solve a problem for them. I continue to be valuable to them. And I manage those people that I bring in to solve those low-hanging fruit problems, because they're already working too many hours, right? Or they wouldn't need us. So I get paid to manage those people and solve early problems. And then all the way from the very beginning of our relationship, I'm talking about their need for a CFO, and positioning myself to be that fractional person in their leadership team. I don't talk about, I'll finish this project and I'll be gone tomorrow. Now, sometimes when I finish my good, I don't want to work for them at all. And I'm very happy to have an exit. Right? Have you ever worked for anybody you go, man, I don't think I want to wake up in the morning and talk to this person? They're out there, right? So, but good, better, and best, but you're always positioning yourself to be a long-term relationship. My clients last 3 to 7 years. Okay. So it's not, I have shorter term ones, but the ones that I count on for my income are 3 to 7 year type relationships and longer. And when I tell them I'm thinking about dropping them, they go, why? And I say, well, you're not doing what I want, what I've been telling you to do. So I don't want you on my resume. It's not getting better. And they go, okay, well, don't leave. Tell us what we need to do. So it's almost a veiled threat when I say, we got to move on, right? So anyway, understand the difference between consulting and being a fractional leader. Okay. Again, if you're a CFO, you're not in there doing the books. You shouldn't be. You should help them build a controller, or help them, know what they should be getting from their accounting manager. You might have to do some of that, but really you got to get out of that. If you're a CFO, and almost unanimously everybody here said they were finance people, right? So I always point out to people, when you go to a university, there's the accounting department and there's the finance department. There's nothing wrong with either of them. They're totally different career paths and they're totally different skill sets. So if you want to be, and there's nothing wrong with being a fractional controller, an assistance person. I didn't say that. But if we're talking fractional CFO, I'm going to encourage you to be that strategic process and um, builder in their business. Okay. So a little bit of why people, this is what it is, and this is why people get into this. And we talked about this a little bit. Fractional can provide all the flexibilities that you need in your life. I didn't say it was easy to build a fractional business, but these are the benefits you will get from building it. Okay. We're okay here. I mean, for me, 3 o'clock today, I ran off to the gym because I knew I had this, well, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, my time. I looked at my calendar. I said, I don't want to work anymore. I got this great group of people to talk to at 4. I ran off to the gym. Nobody asked me what I was doing, right? I was very, I'm flexible. And, you know, I'm planning on working from Michigan for half of August this year. Nobody cares. I can go wherever I want. And okay. So all of these things are important. Okay. Any questions about what fractional is? Because this is a really high level discussion on it, but I'm open to any questions you have about what fractional means versus at least the way I've defined it. Anybody?
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned it, it takes some time to get it started. How long did it take you to get it up and running? For folks that might be living off severance or what have you.
Well, I always tell people, find a job, some type of talk to headhunters, get some interim work, right? Because who knows, it could take you longer than others. Okay. For me, well, it's better. I created this class with my partner, Brendan, who, by the way, was going to be here and got double booked. She's talking to a bunch of manufacturers about fractional right now in another webinar. But we have a class called Freeway to Fractional I'll tell you more about. Most people can get to revenue if they do what we tell them before they finish the 10-week class. It may not be replacing your income, but if you do what we teach you, you can get to revenue very, very quickly. Okay. You know who doesn't get to revenue very quickly?
People who don't follow.
Analyticals that don't just do it, which unfortunately is a lot of CFOs. So, yeah. But it is a lot of fun. It's taken me a long time. Overall, I did the cardinal sin of getting my business rolling and then going to a startup. Again, that keeps coming up, Scott.
Yep.
Luckily or unluckily, the COVID killed it, but it was during a period of time when no one was doing anything and no one even noticed. So I finished 2020 August. I came back to fractional and I was back to 6-figure incomes by the end of the month, by the end of the year, right? Annualized. But everybody's different. And we do talk about that startup period and it's reasonable. Like I was talking to a young man this morning and he's actually starting the clean energy job group for the FENG. I can't think of his name. Mark. How could I forget his name? His name is Mark. And I said, call, if you don't have work, call these guys that do, short-term jobs, Aston Carter, whoever, and get some work and keep some cash flow, but make sure you put some boundaries around it so that you have, 15 hours a week to start building your business. Okay. So that's a really good question, Scott. I mean, there's no
Thanks.
magic pill in starting a job, right? And then a lot of people go, well, I'll just join a group. Well, it takes time for the groups to start to find jobs for you too. I mean, you don't go to 0 to 100 in, the first week, right? So just know that. David, you were going to ask a question. I saw your hand. Oh, you're on mute, by the way. David, you're muted. Are you okay? You're muted.
Okay, got it. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, what you just brought up was one of the most important questions I had. So I'm just going to close the door here, which is, I think I know the answer to the question, but I even want to explore more. Yeah, what's the difference between, I think what we're talking about is creating your own fractional practice. So the question is going to work for a Robert Half or a CFO Alliance or Focus also considered fractional and part of what we're talking about, or we're really talking about your own work? Just now, I think you said the word Gaston Carter,
It's
where
it's
you're referring to that type of company, right?
it's both, right? I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about my friend Brad Martin's Focus CFO group here at the end, you know, but here, the people in any group are the people that are rainmakers, right? If you've been with a CPA firm, if you've been with a law firm, if you see this, if you know what we teach you, you will be the rainmaker in your group and you will make more money than anybody else there, right? So you need to understand these same concepts, whether you go with a group or you do it on your own. Okay. And that's a whole subject of a portion of Freeway to Fractional is, should you go with a group? Should you do it yourself? And there are great groups out there. I'm sort of, feeling like I'm working for somebody. So I get the cold sweats just thinking about it. So that's me, but there's nothing wrong with these groups, these great groups. And there's a whole section on that. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we can't get too delayed, but yes, the right group will be fractional CFOs. Another group will call themselves fractional CFOs and they're all controllers doing bookkeeping. Okay. Another group will be great to work with. The other group will be a bunch of jerks. You need to know what you're getting into. Okay. That's all. If you fit the culture, you fit the type of work they do, yeah, go for it. They do the administrative work. They do a lot of the marketing, right? There's a lot of benefits, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. They're taking 30 to 50% of your income, right? So I can
Right.
work half as hard by myself and make the same amount of money, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in
And I'm
reality.
sure you're going to tell us, and I'm not being facetious, about how to sign up for your course and how often it's offered, because I'm chomping at the bit.
It's very cool. So anyway, I'm going to transition out of the definition of fractional now because we only have so much time. But I will tell you, there's a lot of information about this out there that I can share with you, and we'll also talk about other resources towards the end of this. Okay. So, in the U.S., domestic, whatever, it's hard for me to. The market has embraced CFOs, and I put this all on one slide here. I mean, they understand the cost efficiency. People, they like the flexibility, right? They like the expertise they can get. All of these things. And it really took off for CFOs. I will tell you that the bottom line is it's not going to just be CFOs that are fractional. As a matter of fact, my course, Freeway to Fractional, we teach all kinds of, we have chief operating officers, we have chief marketing people, we have supply chain people, all of these people coming together to do basically what CFOs have been doing for the last several years. Okay. So it's a growing industry. It's a growing process. We'll talk a little bit about that. But this is really working for people in the US markets, the domestic markets. Okay. The real question is, and we're going to transition into, is it working in Latin America? Okay. And I've got 4 or 5 points that I've got contrast for, but this is happening. Does anyone disagree with that? The fractional CFO is booming in the United States. Everybody's good with that? Because it is. It's crazy. You know, and it's caught on, and it's amazing. Now, one of the
Mark,
things, yeah, go ahead, Forrest.
I got a question. Since you're in the market and we're discussing the market for this,
Sure.
you know, I've watched in Houston the last 12, 15 years, and I've had one close friend that went to B2B CFO. There's
Yeah.
also virtual CFO. There's also some, you know, homegrown shops and everything.
Yeah, I know all
What do
of
you see? What are you seeing nationwide as far as growth? Can you point to, I mean, like in Houston, at one point, B2B had 12 partners. I've been out of the country basically for 4 years with COVID, and I have no idea where they're at right now. But do you have any anecdotal or gut or industry numbers that can give an idea of growth in the fractional organizations over the last 2, 3, 4 years? I'm
They're
just
just growing
curious.
like crazy, right? I
Well,
mean, I know that's
I'm a
crazy.
numbers
So
guy.
just kind of-
Crazy could be
and
10
I
or
don't have
crazy
any,
could be 300.
I should answer your question more specifically. No, I don't have anything but anecdotal information. But
All right.
like Focus CFO is 150 CFOs now.
Okay.
Okay. I see no indication other than people are retiring from B2B that it's done nothing but grow, right? I see these small groups, you know, these for lack of a better term, the mom and pop, you know, small groups are going from 2, 3, and 5 to 10 CFOs. I don't see any indication anecdotally that this business is going backwards.
Yeah.
And
And I would look at that as an indication that the SME market in general is recognizing the value proposition. And I guess you're going to talk about customer acquisition at some part, but you know, you got to kind of ride the wave. You don't want to be too late, but you don't want to be too early. And that may be the issue with Latin America, but I'm just tossing
yeah,
out.
I don't know about Latin America, okay, but my
Okay.
understanding is it's not penetrated as a common practice, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But how many clients? I need 4 clients or 5, right? If I look at the market in Kansas City, and I don't think I can find 4 or 5 people. And by the way, I say that I'm in Kansas City. I have a client in Virginia, Arkansas, Texas, Michigan. You know, one of the good things that came out of COVID was I don't have to go to people's offices anymore.
Right.
So I'm all over the country now. And I've have clients I've never, ever set foot in their building. Okay. So there's no limitation. And as a matter of fact, if I can get an East Coast or West Coast client and I'm living on Kansas City cost of living, I'm killing it. Right. I mean, that's fantastic for me because I just raised my rates by 20% immediately when I talk to those guys. Right. You know, so, you know, again, I don't think there's any right time. It's just knowing how to address the market. And we're not really going to talk about client acquisition in this meeting because that's a huge topic, right? But there's no shortage of work. And it's only, you know, we hear about this gig economy. This is the gig economy. This is perfect. And the millennials get credit for it, but the boomers are really going to get the benefit, are going to benefit from it because they have they've got the expertise and ability and experience to where they can come in and sell themselves on a part-time basis and move on to the next deal, right? So a lot of packed into that statement I just made, but it's crazy. So I'm going to transition from I'm going to basically say it does work in America, in the domestic market. And then we're going to now transition to discussions about 3 or 4 things about Latin America. And as I said earlier, these are all based on my research. Okay. Could be totally wrong, and I would love to learn what you guys think about these next comments, right? But going to this intro of this section, I think it's about market maturity. Okay. From what I can read, it's gaining access, gaining traction. Same thing that happened 10 years ago in the United States, right? I mean, we didn't know what fractional anything was 10 years ago, but there were people out there making money and doing it. They called it part-time CFO, but it's evolved to this term called fractional. And we've already talked about the definition of that. Okay. So I think, to Forrest's comment, that we're certainly not early or too early in Latin America. And I believe, to address that situation, I believe new people can come into the fractional market for the rest of my lifetime in the United States, because people leave it, new companies come on board. In the US, I do business transition, and through the Exit Planning Institute, they just did a survey about small companies, 20 million, just at the bottom of the middle market and lower. And there's $14 trillion of value that has to transition in the next 10 years. 10 years ago, it was $10 trillion of value. So it only grows. And these are small companies. This is where you need to start looking, because these are companies that, if you want to talk to 50 million, 100 million dollar companies, they can afford full-time people, right? And that, at least in the United States, and I should have thought of looking at this before this meeting, the small business is the huge percentage of the economy. Okay.
And the fastest growing.
And and these people, I have some break points in my life, in my mind, right? 3 million in revenue, mom and dad can still do it. You get to 10 million, they're struggling, they're working, they need to do something different. Right. And they need to get themselves in place to sell the private equity at 20 million, right? So if you can help them get from that 10 to $20 million and build an org chart with them, that's your job. You're going to make them, the return on investment for your time is unbelievable. Okay. So that's not exactly what we're here to talk about, but I sort of ad-libbed that in.
Yeah, that was Tatum's proposition, was to get through that no man's land between 10 or 15 million and put in that second level of leadership systems and get it to 50 or 100.
Right. And that's exactly what we as a group can help people do.
Yeah. Bring
that big company mentality into that lower middle market, or even small business sector. Okay. So anyway,
Mark, could I ask a quick question about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and by the way, sorry, I have a hard stop in 4 minutes. So if I drop off while you're still talking, my apologies in advance.
I'm going to be offended. I think you didn't like me.
No, I'm sorry. I just have a 6 p.m. I'm on New York, but No, but I would love to connect. Sorry for, I don't want to consume everybody's time, but I'll reach out to you directly as well. But I was just curious about the kind of work that I do is really on the FP&A strategic side. So that's either you're investing in organic growth, like mostly like B2B, like really how to make data-driven sales and marketing investments, but also related to M&A. I work with PE-backed companies. So in that sense, I am, sort of like in between a consultant and a fractional. So I'm kind of like the kind of person who comes in, does like 2-3 months of cleanup work and really sort of like baselines the historical data and creates the future, the financial future picture of the company. And I'm just curious because I have that big company mentality, and I find it, in addition to working with larger companies, the skill set is very portable. The building codes of doing this work are actually, there's a lot of universal building codes, especially when it comes to, resource allocation, when it comes to setting targets, and when it comes to compensation and things like that. And I'm just curious how you see that being adopted in sort of like the SMB or SME world, because what I'm seeing is that the strategic finance kind of like piece, it's not always needed, right? It's not like a controller on a daily basis or maybe even on a weekly basis, but it is often needed on a monthly basis after that initial cleanup period. So I'm just curious what you see there from a product market fit perspective.
I'm so impressed if you can clean up somebody in a couple months. It just takes a lot longer than that. I mean, that's my experience. I think you need to get down into those smaller businesses. And I would encourage you to stop limiting your wealth to that or your value to that. But think about what that takes people to and the coaching it takes to implement the strategies that you see and take for granted because you just see them and you understand them. Business owners don't. And so they need a coach every week or every month or whatever it is. I do 90-day sprints with my clients. Okay. So I set goals every 90 days. We sit down every 90 days and we talk about why did we accomplish it and why didn't we? Okay. So I'm always driving them towards the information or the solutions that you actually uncovered. And there's no reason you shouldn't be part of that process.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, my engagements sometimes run up to 9 months in that sense. But anyway, that was very helpful. Thank you. And I will reach out separately.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll get the slides out to you. Be good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I think it's just a matter of I sort of went off on a bit of a rabbit trail here about fractional and why it's so cool. But I do think those things we're talking about, we have to figure out why they're not being fully implemented in Latin America. And the first concept I have is just demand and awareness, right? I personally think that potentially people in Latin America they're not aware of this thing being available, right? So you may be the only light in the in the dark, right? The little candle in your neighborhood, in your community, in your relationships. So your job is to find that 30-second commercial that people can understand. And it's not, I'm a fractional CFO, right? That doesn't mean anything to anybody. When I put people through my Freeway to Fractional and then I see them at a networking event and they go, I'm a fractional CFO, I just want to strangle them. I'm sorry. It's like, what do I do? And I'll just use it. I help people understand the value of their business and their options to transition to either their children or to third parties. And in that process, I help them improve the value of their business. If that's interesting to you, I'd like to talk to you. What am I? I'm a fractional CFO. But that's something that these people can understand. Yours might be different. I help people set up systems to optimize their finances. I don't know. That's what I do. Okay. But if you say I'm a fractional CFO, they go, well, that's really nice. My Aunt Grace can't explain that to her neighbor. Right? I always pick on my Aunt Grace. If she can't tell, but she goes, oh, Mark helps people I'm at the club. Oh, you want to sell your business or get it ready? Oh, yeah, Mark helps people transition their businesses. Oh, yeah, okay. She understands it. Anybody can understand that pitch. Pick the first section of Freeway to Fractional is defining your superpower and what you like to do. Okay. If you don't, I always say it's going to take you a little while. Scott, as you talked about in Forest, it's going to take you a little while to build a really solid fractional business. You might as well build the one you like. I mean, I started out, I got a CVA so I could do business valuations. And after about a year and a half, I was like, I can't do this ever again. I don't want to do this. Right. I mean, why, anyway, it's just bizarre. And I did it because I always did it. But then I realized it wasn't my passion. My passion is to help people understand that what their options are with that value and how to improve it. Right now, I still do them, but I've outsourced a bunch of that work. Okay. Anyway, that's another story. So anyway, I think we need you need to be part of growing the awareness in your circle, in your network. You only need a network of 5 or 6 people. You don't need 1,000 people in your network. Then understand what you're doing and help them introduce you to people. And then we teach you how to ask questions to understand people's problems. And then if that's a problem that you want to solve, then you go back and tell them, hey, would you like to get together? I might be able to solve this issue. That's like 2 weeks of classes right there that I've just summarized. But your job here is to help build that awareness if you want to build fractional business in Latin America, is my opinion. Anybody disagree with that? Go ahead.
No, I absolutely not disagree. I have been working with a networking business group here in Monterrey for probably 7 years. The last 2 years I have been focused in the CFO, fractional CFO service. And I'm still having hard time to explain exactly what does it means. Because some of them say, oh, okay, you're an accounting firm. No, I'm not an accounting firm. Okay, so you're a tax specialist. No, I'm not a tax specialist. So I have been working trying to explain them that I can involve all those specialties, but not necessarily as a person that is doing the business. No, so I think that we have to go deeper and try to explain these guys that we are more different than a consultant, but a fractional service that they can take advantage of that. I haven't struggled, so that's why I'm here trying to understand what can I do different to explain these guys that doesn't understand the fractional services.
Well, you should reach out to me and we can talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you.
That's exactly right. But if when I first started, my 30-second commercial took about 25 minutes. You've got to avoid that. Find the hook. Find this, like I said earlier, when I said what I do, I found that effective. If they're interested in transition and business valuation, they go, tell me more about it. I'll say, look, let's get together and talk more about it. You give me your number, let's get together and set up a meeting. Now I've got a hot prospect. I'm not going to try to explain anything to anybody that's not interested in what I do. So that's sort of rough. So anyway, demand and understanding and awareness has got to grow in Latin America. Yes, Forrest, did you have a question?
Just a question on the ground and to set kind of expectations. When you do set that hook, for every 100 people that you set that with, or every 10 people that you have that discussion with, what is your experience in the US market with the conversion to long-term client?
You must be a financial analyst. You like these statistics.
I have many questions.
I
I
love it. I love it totally.
well, I just big comments like a lot. Well, I mean,
I'm sorry. I am a little bit of an entertainer. I apologize.
I'm quantitative.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm quantitative only because words are symbols and they can mean different things to different people. So,
I totally. I'm not. I'm just teasing back. I'm not.
but yeah, but part of the sales, I'm just trying to think through. Let's say I'm in Bogota and I'm talking to people. Um, you know, in I don't know what it is in the US. I'm guessing maybe 10 or 15 conversations to have one invitation to come in, and then maybe half of those end up in an assignment and half of them don't. Is that a reasonable model to expect or a goal for people to look at in Latin America, or is it likely to be 50 conversations?
I
And
know it certainly is. And again, this is sort
what's
of
what's what's the funnel? What's the funnel
right,
look like? Yeah.
right, and that's a huge conversation. But I will tell you, if you do it where you understand and listen to the people you're talking to, and
Right.
talk to the ones that have a problem,
Yeah.
and then come back to them with a solution, you're
Yeah.
going to have a lot better success rate.
Qualification.
It's got to be, see, my favorite thing, and this is again, we're way off topic here a little bit, but when somebody goes to the hardware store and they buy a drill, okay, this is sort of weird. They really don't want a drill, they want a hole. And us as technicians want to talk about the drill all day, but we really need to understand the hole, right? What's
Yeah,
the
you got to listen.
problem that the drill needs to solve, right? So it's sort of weird, but it changes the whole dynamic of that funnel that you're talking about. Totally. Does that help? I mean, I
Yep.
can't
Yeah,
answer.
client selection is the number one reason that service businesses survive or don't. I mean, sometimes you got to fire the client too, but that's a whole other topic.
I've already sort of mentioned I fire clients if they don't work
Yeah.
with. The worst thing that
Yeah.
I can have on my resume is I worked with Mark for 5 years and nothing got better.
Right.
Not going to happen. And I feel guilty billing people for, I'm not cheap, right? So if they're not doing what I'm telling them, I'm out of there. I don't want to be part of that, but that's another story. So anyway, back to Latin America. If you don't, we've got types of clients. We talked about this. We were just talking a little bit about it. So maybe I was a little ahead of myself. We have grown in the US. We have sort of had a pretty good acceptance of fractional across all sizes of businesses, right? What they're seeing is small businesses, much smaller in Latin America at this time. And that I don't find that to be a problem. I will tell you that as my business matures, my selectivity as to who I work with has gotten a little more higher. So now I'm looking to work with, $10 million sales companies or a couple $1 million of EBITDA. Okay. That's sort of where my targets are. I've worked with much smaller and I work with much bigger. I'm working with $100 million company right now. It's good, but they're a disaster. And they need so much help. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, how does somebody get to a $68 million value and run it the way they're running it?
Right.
It's just amazing to me, right? So we're getting there. So anyway, I think we need to look at who in Latin America, who needs these services and then target them, like to Forrest's comment, right? If you're going after the companies that are run by the government, you're not going to get anything, right? I mean, I've done a little natural gas stuff in Mexico in the past. So, this is a crazy stuff, right? Big money, and they have all the money in the world. They're not going to hire you. So again, who are the companies that aren't $100 million companies now that are struggling to become $100 million companies? And you need to start targeting those size companies from my perspective, right? When I'm starting to repeat myself, which happens a lot when you're 67 years old, by the way, but anyway, so the whole point here is identify what you love to do. Identify your favorite people to work with, and then figure out what their problems are that you can solve doing what you love to do. Okay. So now that I look at the slide, it's sort of a generic statement, but it's great. It's big. Sorry. Words. It's all of those guys. But anyway, I do think that the next thing that in the process of you guys going out and talking about fractional is figuring out the types of clients that would be most receptive in your country to fractional work, right? So the types of clients, again, this slide talks about larger corporations. I just sort of slid in. I'm not even their CFO. I'm doing M&A consulting for them, right? I'm bringing in another guy to do the CFO work because I don't want anything to do with it. Okay, so it's a bigger company. They can afford many of me and my friends, so it's good. We're landing and expanding our relationships there. But the smaller companies, 5 to $15 million, are really great targets in the United States. I don't know what it looks like in your market. I like that those bigger companies because it doesn't hurt them to pay me. I feel guilty when I'm working with a $500,000 or $1 million company, and I'm making more than the president, right? I just can't do it. Right? I just can't help them. I've done it in the past. Really didn't work well for me. So that's what I need you to think about. Here's something I don't know anything about. Maybe some of you people that have worked in these companies, it's pretty easy in the US. It's well established. We know the rules. Mostly. Or we can find somebody that does. I'm not so sure the regulatory framework in Latin America is well defined. Any comments on that? Anybody
Yes.
run into problems with this?
So any regulations to be a fractional CFO? I don't think we have any of that in Brazil.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
So far it's very.
I think you need to
Very good.
understand, especially when you're giving, it's not so much that it's against fractional, it's just understanding the advice that you're giving and making sure you're not crossing any lines, right? So I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this slide, but I think you need to think about it. You need to really understand the rules and regulations around the type of advice you're giving, right? And then this is the most important slide, right? Is it culturally acceptable in your countries to have somebody part-time, or do you have to have, or do they have to be part of the full-time family? Right? Thoughts, processes, make sense? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I think that both from the regulatory standpoint and cultural standpoint, there are some very big obstacles in Latin America. I would say, although I've been living in Brazil for 34 years now, my experience in Brazil, my professional experience in Brazil, and in other Latin American countries also, with which I've worked, is that there is not a whole lot of trust to strangers. So there's I would say it's a kind of a clenched culture, which is really, really strong, which make that from someone from outside will have some problems being accepted. And that's one thing. And the other thing is that from a regulatory standpoint, what I've been living in various countries is that, well, the Latin American countries, almost all of them are very complex from a regulatory standpoint. So that makes also, I think it's also represents quite a big obstacle for these kind of services, I would say.
Uh-huh.
No,
I agree.
That's the impression I have. Some other people may not agree with me, but that's the impression I have as a European guy living in Latin America for quite a long time.
Right. Now, I don't doubt it, but I won't say, and I'm going to go back to the cultural stuff because I don't have an answer for the regulatory. Okay. My clients are not going to hire me if I don't have a connection or trusted, if I can't build relationship with them. It's my job to understand people, understand how to talk to them, and build trust. Okay. Now I can start building trust through their wealth advisor, their attorney, their accountant, but I have to pick up that ball, understand them, listen to them, and build that relationship so they want me around all the time and they're willing to spend money on me all the time. Doesn't mean I have to make them happy. Just means they have to trust me to take care of them. Okay. I mean, I tell people their baby's ugly a lot. And it's not fun, but it's the truth, right? So I can't do that if they don't trust me. And I have to have some, courage. I was about to say something that was probably not culturally acceptable here. I have to have some courage to stand up to my clients sometimes and say, no, but I can't do my job. And I'm not saying this same culture, but I think it's our job wherever we live to build those kinds of relationships, trusting relationships, where they don't want me to leave them. Okay.
So, if I may, Mark, I'm also going to say something about Brazil. In my experience with working, advising some companies, several companies at the same time, it wasn't a role to be called as a fractional CFO, but I was advising 3 to 4 companies at the same time. The hard thing it is for them to understand that you are there to be like a strategic advisor, that you are not there to actually implement. When you mentioned about the 90 days sprint, that will be a little hard to get to work depending on how big the company that you are targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Because for this 90 sprint, they might not have the people to actually apply everything that you're going to say, and you need to be there more frequently.
Right.
So the perception of risks that you
I didn't say I
mentioned.
was only there every 90 days. I just said
No, I understand. But to actually put that into action. So the perception of risks that you mentioned in the last paragraph here, it is actually that they might understand what you're showing them that their baby is ugly, as you just said. The hard thing is that it's just going to be a perception, just going to be an idea, and it won't be implemented. I think that's the crucial part for us here in Brazil, when you're targeting middle market, family business, and all of that.
I totally understand. Some clients have one objective for 90 days. Some have 5 objectives, depending on their organization from here. And they don't all get done because they pretend they say it's important, but then they don't do it. And you said, and that's why you meet every 90 days. So it's not your fault, right? It's like, hey, we've been trying to get this done. And 99% of the time, if it doesn't get done, it's just really not important to them. They just pretend that it is, so you've got to keep that communications going. But-
Yes, and so we have to be like working as an advisor. You have to be, you have to have a lot of flexibility. That's that's the mandatory, because you might go from the same sector, from one company to another, from the same industry, from the same area, and it will have a lot of differences.
Right.
And that is a crucial point to be an advisor, I
Right.
think, in Brazil, but I think you might experience the same thing in the US.
Yeah, and my friend Jeff Peterson, great fractional CFO, he had $2,000 clients, $3,000 clients, and $5,000 clients. That was his retainer structure. And sometimes if you might start at 5 and end up at a 2, depending on where you are, but that's how he priced it, based on their capacity to actually get the work done. Right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm not disagreeing with what you said in any way. Okay. Every client's different. There's no but there's no typical client. Forrest would say statistically there are. And I love
Well, there
it.
might be buckets, but our value add is to know which bucket they're in, or where are they on the spectrum of development? What do they really need? We should all by this time have a big grid of skill sets at different levels and reach into the toolkit, put it here, torque it like this. That's you got to know what tool to grab, to go back to your analogy of the screwdriver. And if you overdo it or underdo it, you're not going to get the result.
Right. Yeah, you can freak people out by trying to change them too fast.
Right.
About 80% of the time, my first job is just to get them to understand their org chart, because they're doing about 10 things and they don't even know it.
Right.
Right.
And you can only have one most important objective.
I agree. It's fun. So anyway,
Usually it's cash. Should be cash.
well, there's nothing wrong with cash, but that's how the problem is. That's how they run their business. I have cash in the bank. I'm okay. It doesn't mean it is at all.
Right.
There's no planning. There's
Well,
no.
welcome to accrual accounting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I have a client that's now at about $16 million in revenue. When I met them, they were at about 4.5. Their
Mhm.
margins were 10%, and now they're 28% because they listened. But when I put a percentage of sales in their income statement for the first time, they had no idea why I did that. So it's just a matter of being patient and training and coaching and setting strategic goals and helping people understand the value of these goals, not just saying, hey, you need to do this. Okay. So I'm going to end with this whole thing as far as culture. And I personally believe this model can work in Latin America. Will it be? And it can work for you, whether it works for the entire industry or not. It can work for your business because now you understand how to sell you and what your goals are for them. So how do you do that, right? Now what? And I'm going to do some commercials here. Okay. First of all, if you're in the United States and you are looking for a group, my friend Brad Martin at Focus CFO is a fine starting point. They do a great job, and I'm not going to push it more, but I absolutely suggest you check them out. Also, I'm sorry. I've related to this class we've built called Freeway to Fractional. Okay. Freeway to Fractional is a step-by-step course over 4 modules and about 25 lessons that takes you through understanding your superpower. What do you love to do? What would you do if you could to make money based on your career? We help you understand that and develop a hypothesis for the market. Chapter 2, how do you go to the market and prove that? Right? Let's go and prove our hypothesis. The sooner you pivot, the better. If there's nobody that wants it, right? Let's look at how to do that quickly. Okay. Chapter 3 or module 3 is about groups versus solopreneur. It's about systems that you can use, software programs, CRMs, all that stuff, sort of the back office part of how to be efficient in building a fractional business. Okay. And then module 4 is how to launch and how to go and scale your business once you get a foundation. It's step by step. It's a couple $1,000s. It's phenomenal. Everybody that has taken it has said we're undercharging for it. Loved for you to check it out and let me know if you have any questions. Here's the link for that. And you'll be getting these slides tomorrow, so you'll be able to do this. Okay. And then you're not alone in this, right? You're a FENG member, right? So you should come to our SBMOs with Brad Martin and I've mentioned him earlier. He's the founder of Focus CFO. He and I once a month get together and talk about fractional issues in building your fractional CFO business. Okay. And it's fantastic. We have a great time. 2 different perspectives. He built a big group. I'm by myself. Right. And so we balance each other out pretty well. And then Matt also does one. Matt Budd does one once a month. He's more on the how do you set up your business processes, things like that. All very valuable information. He does a great job of it. Okay. So next week, by the way, we are having our SBMO. It's in Matt's newsletter every week, every day. But Brad and I are doing another one next week. And this one is about, this is a fancy title, using stories to sell your business. Okay. This sounds a little confusing, but that's the best way for people to understand what you do. And Brendan's actually leading that discussion, my partner. It's going to be a phenomenal deal. And this is the Zoom link. So if you don't really have to register, and that's in the Matt's newsletter every day, you can find it there. Or you can go to there's a LinkedIn registration page as well. So give you a little more information about it. And then I'm also, next week, it just happens that Brad, we have two days in a row, the Southern Florida chapters are doing a joint meeting. The place I found this information on was the Fort Lauderdale chapter, but we're going to talk about the 4 things you should know about fractional services. That's going to be a lot deeper into some of those things that we sort of touched base on today about, knowing more about whether you want to be in a fractional business or not. Okay. And then we have some free content for you, which is 5 proven strategies to connect with the perfect opportunity. Okay. And this is just some content that Brendan and I put together, mostly Brendan, about how to network with people and sell your business, your services. Okay.